The Lord be with you. Thank you. Hey guys, the Lord be with you too. Smile. I know school's going to start. I know that's kind of a rough thing, but God's with us. So go ahead, smile. Okay? Otherwise I'm going to have people come up and tickle you. No, we don't want to do that. Okay. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. On a Sabbath, Jesus went to dine at the home of one of the leading Pharisees, and the people there were observing him carefully. He told a parable to those who had been invited, noticing how they were choosing the places of honor at the table. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not recline at table in the place of honor. A more distinguished guest than you may have been invited by him, and the host who invited both of you may approach you and say, "Give your place to this man," and then you would proceed with embarrassment to take the lowest place. Rather, when you are invited, go and take the lowest place, so that when the host comes to you, he may say, "My friend, move up to a higher position." Then you will enjoy the esteem of your companions at table. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. Then he said to the host who invited him, "When you hold a lunch or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or your wealthy neighbors, in case they may invite you back and you have repayment. Rather, when you hold a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind. Blessed indeed will you be because of their inability to repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Do I look like riffraff? Do I look like a dirtbag? We'll get back to that, okay? When I was a kid, I grew up around the block from a beach. We lived on, I guess it's a peninsula because there was a creek on both sides. There was the width of our street, and on the one end there was maybe 3 more houses to the creek, and on the other end there was just houses in their backyards in the creek. 2 blocks away was a beach, public beach, that was basically the length of creek almost to the next creek. It was owned by the town, and we had to get passes for the summer. My parents worked very hard and saved all year to save $50 to get a family beach pass so that we could go there during the summer, and we spent most of our time there. It was a great place. It had a bay, and in the bay there was a floating dock that you could go out. That was the only place where you could dive, and we'd have a great time doing that. There was a pool, and then there was a wading pool for the little kids. There was a playground. There was tetherball. There was, down at the end was volleyball. Now, toward the end where there was volleyball, there was then a fence. And like I said, the beach didn't go the whole length from one creek to the next because there was a fence, and then there was a private yacht club. Now the yacht club was for rich people, you know, and you had to, first of all, pay your membership every year, which was way more than $50, and you had to own a boat. We built a raft out of a picket fence once. I don't think that counts, you know. And the thing is, every once in a while when we were playing volleyball, and we had our summer friends, you know, people who we only saw there from different towns, but they came here to the beach and they hung out just like we did, and we had our summer friends and we played volleyball and tetherball with them. When we're playing volleyball down the end, you can see the fence, and on the other side of the fence, in the small area, which with a small beach, we would see 2 or 3 kids, the rich kids, because they had a boat, and their parents could afford the membership, and the clubhouse had a nice gathering space and all that sort of stuff. But you know what? They had nobody to play with. There was 3 of them, and it was like the fence that was keeping us out. I felt like they were looking and saying, "Can I come over onto your side?" The rich ones were poor because they isolated themselves thought that I was an outsider to them because we had so much fun at the beach. The only time I ever felt it was we would go crabbing, and sometimes we would go into the parking lot of the yacht club because they had a bulkhead, and you would look on the poles to see if there was crabs, and somebody would say, "You're not allowed here, it's private property." Oh, that's right. I'm riffraff. I'm a dirtbag. I gotta leave. And you would kind of feel that way. Well, I was just on retreat this past week, and I noticed something that I don't really notice that much in Ronkonkoma, but I do notice it on Long Island. I rented a little place, a little garage apartment actually, in Connecticut, and just had some great time with me and God. But what I did was did a lot of walking. But I could only walk on certain streets because gated community, stay out, violators will be prosecuted, all this sort of stuff. You're riffraff. You don't count because you can't afford this place that we live in. Now, I got to tell you, I'm making an extreme of that. I'm not saying that every gated community is that, but the thing is, what can happen with that, what can happen with the yacht club, with anything that's private like that, is we can create a gate around our heart to try and keep others out. And when we do that, we're in trouble. Last week, Jesus said, try to enter through the narrow gate. Many will try and will not have to be strong enough. The narrow gate is our heart. And he's asking us to open our heart to everyone. But when I was a kid, the yacht club people didn't open their hearts to us. And you know what? I felt like the poor kids were in their own private hell because they were isolated. They were just victims of the fact that their parents had money and decided to do it this way rather than, and we were having a ball with all these other kids, playing volleyball, running around, doing all this stuff together. And you have 2 or 3 kids alone. We live in a world that's doing that to us. We're isolating ourselves from one another. What Jesus is telling us today is to be really careful about the hierarchy type of stuff that happens with I'm better than you and I have more than you and that type of stuff. Going for the important places at the table. When we kind of create a hierarchy, we're closing that gate in our hearts. I have worked pretty much every day of my life since I'm 10 years old. You had to be 12 to get a paper route, but a friend of mine who was a little bit older wanted weekends off. So when I was 10 years old, I went and picked up his papers, paid his bill, and did Saturday and Sunday. I've been working since then. All sorts of jobs. For a while, I worked in a deli. I worked there Saturday all day, 5 to 5. And in the morning, it was all breakfast. It was, there was a guy cooking and stuff like that. I was putting together the sandwiches and putting together the coffee and giving to people. And one guy on the outside, now I had no problem serving people. That was my job. But this one guy said, "Hey, coffee boy." I said, "Excuse me," in such a way he knew. You better not repeat that. He didn't. He learned. I will gladly serve you, but don't you dare tell me that I am subservient to you. I am less than you because my job is serving you. I worked in a parish. In my last year in the seminary, there was a priest who he was on the faculty, became a pastor, and he got me a job. I worked on Saturdays. I was his maintenance guy all day, and then the sacristan for Saturday night. Other than the ministers who came into the sacristy to sign up and say they were here and something like that, nobody knew who I was. I was invisible, even though they saw me running around, setting things up for mass, cleaning things up, and all that sort of stuff. Until mid-May, the pastor announced, by the way, our sacristan, Mike, who has been taking care of things for the last year, he's going to be ordained a deacon pretty soon. He's going to be ordained a priest for the diocese. All of a sudden, they were fawning over me. Oh, I was dirt as far as you were concerned 5 minutes ago. You didn't care about me. But now, wow, we got to work on that. And it really comes down to an attitude thing. I heard a story about a nun who, she said, back in the days when we walked around in our habits and stuff like that, we got treated special. The one time every 6 months we would go out to eat, you'd walk into a restaurant, "Oh, sisters, come over here, we got a special place for you," and they get them to see you right away. She says, now that we try to kind of be a little bit humbler and not stand out, and we're not wearing these big habits, we walk into a restaurant, then we got to wait a half hour. And you know what? The food's just as good, she says. But the special treatment that we do, we need to work on that. And work on not giving others less treatment. There's members of our community, active members of our community, who are in the Hispanic community. They do very well financially. He owns a little business. They went into a Mercedes dealership to buy a car. And as they walked in, somebody said, "Excuse me, the maintenance people come in over there." Wow. They left there, went to another Mercedes dealership and sat down with the guy, and the guy said immediately, "You can't afford this car." Never saw anything about it. Finally went to a third place and bought the car. But it was because of the color of their skin, they were judged as less. Now I gotta tell you, I'm going to mention that story at the Spanish Mass, and I'm going to say, but you have to be careful that you don't pass on that judgment. So I'm not saying that we are the bad guys. No. I'm just saying anytime when you do that, create a hierarchy in any way, we got to watch out. Lord, in your goodness, you've made a home for the poor. The home for the poor when I was a kid was that beach, and there was so many of us, it was heaven. It was wonderful. And guess what? The rich who kept us out, their children were in their own private hell because they were isolated. And I could see it when they were standing by the fence watching us having a good time. They were missing out. Now that's an extreme example, but the reality is when we try to say, I'm up here and you're down here, we have a problem. When we see ourselves as I'm down here and you're up here, we got a problem. What Jesus is saying is we're all here on even footing. If you want to be first, you'll be the servant of others. We're called to be brothers and sisters. As we began Mass, I said, the Lord has made a home for the poor, but poverty is a lot of different things. There are people who maybe their only encounter this week with another human being was with a cashier. That's another form of poverty, isolation. The thing is, sometimes we have created in our world circumstances where we isolate ourselves from one another. And when we do that, we're isolating ourselves from God. So, coming back to that question, do I look like riffraff? I don't think so. Do I look like a dirtbag? I don't think so. And yet, I kind of felt a little bit of it as I'm walking around and seeing a gated community, you can't come in. Another gated community, private property, you'll be arrested and prosecuted if you come in. I felt like they were telling me that. In heaven, the only fences, the only gates are the ones that we build. God wants to tear them down. Pope Francis had said at one point, Christians don't build walls, they build bridges. That's true. We build bridges to one another, breaking down those circumstances. So that guy who I served coffee to could say, "Hey Mike, can I have a cup of coffee?" rather than a coffee bowl. So that those people who missed me when I was just their sacristan and thought I was wonderful because I was going to be ordained a priest could see me as brother no matter what. So that we can all see in one another brothers and sisters. Does anybody here know the names of our sacristans in this parish? Some of you do. During the week it's Anna Lorraine, on the weekend it's Alina. Sometimes they're just people who do that stuff. Do we know the names of the maintenance people? When I was in junior high, I had a social studies teacher who talked to us about hierarchy, and he asked us, who do you think are the important people? And we were like, well, the principal, and well, this one, and well, that one. He says, next time you walk in the halls, listen for the keys jingling. It's the custodian. He's got the keys to everything. He's the important one. Treat him with dignity. Wow. That's really what we're supposed to do. I walked in I mentioned at the beginning of Mass, I walked into a parish in the south side of Chicago we visited. We were the only 3 white faces in a very poor parish, and they were wealthy in love. And they welcomed us, and they made a home for us in our poverty that could have been isolation. 2 kids, 8-year-old twins, airborne to give us the sign of peace. Unbelievable, the welcome that we got. That's the kind of community that Jesus is calling us to. That's what the kingdom is about. And you know what? In God's kingdom, there is no head at the table. The table's round. We're all in it together. But maybe here on earth, because this is the kingdom of heaven is at hand, maybe we need to look at it from that perspective and stop judging others and and stop allowing others to judge us. Because we're all brothers and sisters. None of us are riffraff. None of us are dirtbags.